In this video, I'm going to show you how you can use filter effects to add some interest or some different effects or different styles to your artwork. So I'm going to do this design with this Joker drawing that I did here, but you can apply these effects I'm going to show you to any image, whether it's one of your digital drawings. Maybe you could do it to a photograph. You could do it to a hand design that you've done that you scan into the computer and import into Photoshop. So you can do this with any type of work, but I'm going to do it based on one of my drawings. So what I'm going to show you is how to use the filters. Now, it's a really nice and easy way of experimenting and adding some interest and playing around with the look and the feel and the textures and the colours and all that kind of thing on your artwork. The benefit of doing this is, firstly, you'll get to learn how to use various different tools in Photoshop. Secondly, you could end up improving or adding some interesting effects to your work that you quite like. And the third reason is, in terms of grading, if you present in your folder that your drawing, this is my drawing that I've created, and then on another page here are all of these experimentations that I did in Photoshop using various different techniques that I'm going to be showing you through a series of videos. You are going to get loads and loads of marks for things like that. So they're really worth doing because they're really quick and easy, and they get you loads of marks because it just shows that you are experimenting with lots of different ideas, and the examiner loves to see things like that, and they'll give you lots of marks for it. So before we start, I've just opened up this image, and what I've got, if I go over to my layers over here, I've got all the layers that I've used for my artwork. So the first thing I want to do is to apply my image just to one layer. Now, I would strongly recommend not flattening your image, because once you've flattened it, you can't then go back and edit it. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to show you a really quick and easy way of applying all of these layers to one layer. So if we go down to the bottom of the layers panel and go to the little plus symbol, the add new layer, and that's my new layer. Make sure it's selected. Then I'm going to go up to the top and I'm going to go to image, and then I'm going to go to apply image. And what that will do is it will take a copy of the whole what's on that page and it will apply it to that layer. So when I click on there, you get an option box. That's just the name, that's the source where it's coming from. So that's this file here. So yep, that's fine. It's not going to merge all my layers, but it's going to create a copy layer with all the layers merged. RGB is the color channel, that's fine. Blending mode, sometimes it might be on multiply, but I prefer to put it onto normal because I just want a normal layer. I don't want to see through the layer. And then I do want 100% opacity because I don't want it faded or anything like that. So I'm going to press OK. So what I've got now, I've got my original design here on all of its many layers, and then I've got my new image that I've just created all on one layer flattened. So that's an easy way of doing that. The second stage, really, really important whenever you're editing something in Photoshop, whether it's filters, whether it's adjustment layers or anything like that, I would always recommend converting this image to a smart object. So if you right click and go to convert to smart object, it's now a smart object. I'll explain the benefit of that in a minute once I've applied my filters, because it'll be easier to explain it when I show you. So now I'm ready to add my filters. So if we go up to filters at the top, and there's lots of options here that you can play with, and I would recommend experiment with them. Okay, so just have a go at as many different ones as you want, just playing around with the different effects that you can create. But I'm going to start off by talking about the filter gallery, and then later on I might show you a couple of these, but I would just say have a play around with it. Once you've converted it to a smart object like we have, if anything looks absolutely terrible, it's really easy to get rid of it, okay, or change it. So I'm going to go to the filter gallery. Make sure you go to this one here, not the top one, because what the top one will do is it'll apply the last filter that you have used. But I don't want to do that. I want to open the filter gallery. So if I click on there, excuse me, this is my image. This is the preview. So I'm going to zoom out a little bit so I can see a bit more of it, because it would be more useful to judge if it looks good if I can see the whole image. So these are all the folders here. With all these different effects. Now the first one it's gone on is just gone on the default, the first one, which is the coloured pencil effect. If I go on to cutout, it will give me whatever one I go on to, it will give me a different effect. So I'm going to start with coloured pencil because I actually thought this was quite interesting. So once you've clicked on it, it's been a little bit slow today. I think it's because I'm at school. and I'm on the Wi-Fi. So once you've clicked on one, don't just sort of judge it and move on or keep it without adjusting it first. So over here you can adjust various different settings, and they'll all be different for the different effects. So the pencil width is, I think that's probably the thickness of the line. So if I bring that down, you can see it's slightly changing. You see the pencil line's getting thinner. So you can decide whether you preferred it thick or thin, and you can change that accordingly. I think I quite like it a little bit thicker. Then the pressure stroke. So let's have a look. If I put that right down, so you can see how it's slightly changing. Not too much. Not too much. I'm going to move it back up again. Let's move it up more than it was and compare it. Yeah, there's not too much change on that one, but I think I will go with it. I'll go a little bit more in the middle. So I can just see how it's changed some of the thickness of some of these lines here. And then the paper brightness. So if I put that up, the image gets much lighter. So we get a slightly better contrast. So I think it looks a bit better lighter than I think it does darker. And then if I pull it down, you can see almost black it goes to. So I think that's way too dark. So I'm going to bring the brightness up a bit more. And I think I'm going to go, I quite like that. Now it is the first one that I've tried, so I would strongly recommend experimenting with all of these, but I like that, so I'm going to press OK. So when I press OK, it's going to apply the effect to my image. Now because we made our image a smart filter or a smart layer, what we can do is I can hide that. So I can say, right, there's my original. I've still got my original. I've not overwritten it. So because I made it a smart object, it allowed me to do that. If I didn't make it a smart object, what would have happened was I would have applied this filter and it would have destroyed my original image. So just sort of bear that in mind, that if you don't make it a smart object, whatever you do to your image, whatever filter or effect or adjustment, you will destroy the original and it will apply the effect and you won't be able to go back. The other benefit of a smart object is if I want to, if I think, do you know what, I think I preferred it darker. I don't, but if I did, I could click back on the filter gallery, double click, and I could adjust it. So I could change my settings and then press OK and it would adjust. So I can easily go back and change it. If I don't want it, let me just wait for it to do this. I could just click on it. Okay, so click on it and then just press delete, or I can click and drag it to the dustbin. I don't want to do that. I'm going to keep it though. So you can easily delete it. You can hide it. You've got your original and you can adjust it. You can play around with it. You can do all sorts. You can even come over to these little sliders here. If I click on there, double click. Just give it a minute to open. And what I can do is, let me zoom out a little bit. So I can change the blending mode of how this image, so what it's doing is it's changing the blend of the filter and the image underneath. So I can go through these and I can try different effects, and that gives me some more, room to experiment. That one's quite interesting, quite like that. But you can go through them all and you can see which ones look best. So you've got quite a few things that you can do. That's obviously looks just like the original. So I'm just skipping through a few at the moment, but go through them and see what you think. That one's I quite like that. I actually quite like that. So I'm going to press OK for that one. So now that's my smart filter. So I can edit the blending mode by clicking on these little sort of lines here. I can double click on the filter gallery if I want to re-edit it, or I can hide it if I want to see my original. So what I would strongly recommend you do is once you've got a design, you think, oh, that looks pretty good, I'm going to hide that now and I'm going to go back to filter. Make sure you've got layer 1 selected. I'm going to go back to filters, back to the filter gallery, and then zoom back out again so I can see the whole image. So what it's done is it's just shown me the last thing that I applied. And if I wanted a red version as well as the sort of the bluish version that I ended up with, I could just press OK. And now I've got two filters. So I've got, it's been a little bit slow. So I can see just that one, or I can see just that one. There we go. So I can move between the two of them. So at the moment, I've just got, that's the first one I applied. If I hide that, that's the second one I applied. So I can use any one I want. With this being slow, I regret clicking on there now. So I'm going to hide it in a minute, and then I'm going to go back. So that's 2 now that I've got. So 2 experimentation, and that didn't take very long at all. So I then would probably go back to the filter gallery and try some others. And just keep going until you find other things, other effects that you really like. So, you know, you can sort of go through them all. Some of them you might think, what's the point in that, because it's doing nothing. But it would have a much better effect on a different type of image, like a photograph or something like that. So that one doesn't do much of this. My image is mostly black and white. So for some of these are designed for, some of them are designed for photographs, some of them are designed for drawings. So like I said, that looks kind of interesting. So let's play around with these settings. Let's try move that down. I think it looks better with it down, but I'll try it with it up to compare. No, I don't like that. So I'm going to move that back. You can change the colour. So at the moment, as you can see, it's blue. So I can change that to something else. Will it let me preview it? No, I've got to click on it. And that gives me a pink, or you can have whatever colour you want. That's a bit stark. I think the blue looked better. But, you know, let's try a really dark, see how that looks. And let's go back to a dark blue. But, you know, I'm just playing around. You don't need to see me play around too much with it, but I just want to be, you know, clear that you can experiment with this and play around. And if you think, do you know what, I quite like that, I'm going to press OK. That applies it. I've got a new filter. I'm going to hide that now. And then I'm going to go up to my filters again, filter gallery, and then just work your way through. So at the moment, I've just used the ones in the artistic. You've got brush strokes, so you can try some of these as well. So just have a little sort of experiment and a play around with the different sort of techniques that you can do. That one's kind of interesting. Let's try this smudgy one. So, you know, you don't need to see me play around too much more. I think you've got the general idea, but, you know, I'm just going through these quickly now. But if you see something, oh, that looks quite interesting, it's going to be much easier to see it zoomed out. And then you can try playing around with the effects. So I'm going to press cancel there for a moment. Because for those of you who want to have a play around with that, I would say go and have a play around with that. If you want to experiment more with some of these other effects, probably, I mean, you've got lots of different ones. You've got a blur, that will obviously blur the image in lots of different ways if you want that. That's really good for backgrounds, if you want to blur a background to make the foreground stand out. You can play around with some of these. This will really distort it. There's some interesting ones that you can do here. If we go to 12, for example, and zoom right out, you can see you can distort your picture quite severely, you know. So, you know, for the most part, you probably won't use this for this, but it might be fun just to have a play with it. So that's what that one does. The pixelate ones might be more interesting. So the one I just did was distort. So you can do different distortions. You can play around with it just for a bit of fun, but you probably won't use them on artwork like this. But pixelate can be quite interesting. So color halftones is quite nice. It makes it look like it's covered in colored dots. Crystalline sort of, let's have a look at that one. So it does that kind of effect. So it gives it that texture, and you can, you know, like adds noise to, basically. So you can add a filter like that to it. So just the best thing I'd say is just play around. But if you want something that looks good, probably the pixelate options are quite good. Let's have a look at stylize. These are quite interesting as well. So have a play around with, you know, playing around with all of them and just see what you think, and have a play around. Once you've done a range of designs and you've saved them here and you like them, what I would recommend is that you screenshot each version and present them all on an A3 page, like a PowerPoint slide, and just explain what you did, experimenting with filters to experiment with different colours and textures and all the rest of it. And that's going to get you something that might take you half an hour playing around. Very easy, will get you loads and loads of marks. So I try and suggest do this technique with each of your drawings, especially your digital drawings. If you're in Photoshop anyway, it's not much effort just to then add a few sort of experimental filters to it. But by all means, scan work in and edit some of your own work as well. So have fun and play around with that, and look forward to seeing what you do.